this way round, and as you see the filament starts feeding out, and that will go to the Bowden tube. Okay, I'm going to do some finishing off, like tidying up of these parts I've printed. Now I did print out some of these pins and such like earlier in blue filament. Came out fine. These ones I've just printed out, I think the retraction could have been better because it's left an awful lot of like stringing blobs as it went from one pin to another, what I'm going to call a pin. This has a hole in, and basically on this one you can see what the hole is. Like it's for this 4mm basically nut and bolt. There will be spring on here. This part is what I'm calling the push plate. So I've got some blue painter's tape on. I don't know how I might clean that off, to be honest with you. The holes need drilling out a bit, a little bit tidying up likewise on this one. Obviously you need some, well, a hub bolt and skateboard bearings, nuts, balls. Really you only need two of these pins, a longer one and a shorter one. This longer one which has the hole in, and a shorter one. Drive wheel needs a bit of work. I've already cleaned some of the supports off. Does leave some marks on. The hole will probably need drilling out, and the nut will probably, the bolt head for the hot bolt here, that sort of goes in, but with the bearings on the other side. Hot bolt through here, so I've got the supports on this. Okay, and it's sort of tidying up and fitting them together. Now let me start with this black one. This is the longer pin, as I'm calling it, the one with a hole in, and put that bit out. What I've got is this flat file. There's no handle on this, there's an old file. I'll lay that down. I'm just holding this pin by the sides. Actually some of this is so big it might even, well, I can break it off with my thumb, some of it, thumbnail, or pull it off with probably some long nose pliers. Get it down to a reasonable level, and then gradually turning it. Just let me try to move around a bit so I can show you a bit better. Okay. So I'm basically just rubbing it quite quickly on this valve, gradually turning it just a little bit like this every so often. Holding this hand, it's harder for me to do like this. Just turning it, say, probably less than a 16th. And I'm turning it like round so I can get it very even, well, as even as possible, sort of. file you can see some of the bits. I'm going to have a feel of it, although it might not look too smooth. It probably is a lot smoother there. I think this edge here, which I think was the like brim, could do with filing a bit. So in this case I'm holding it at a bit of an angle like this, and again gradually turn it. Let me do it this way. Sorry about this, that you can't really see it. So I'm just holding it off the edge just so I can get a bit of a almost chamfer on there, like that. And while I'm doing that, I'm going to also go like this with the file, so I'm holding it, and again gradually turning it, moving it round and round slowly. So I'm just pushing it round like that with my fingers as I'm only lightly. I'm not pressing hard here, quite light. And gradually trying to file off any rough edges. Feels pretty smooth, the hole needs doing in there. This one is going to go in this push pin hole in here. Okay, so this will have this bolt through, go into there, and that bolt will like lever up and down, and that will catch into this part on the main body. Actually I think it'd be the bolt head that way around, catch in there and tighten it up on the springs. Okay, what I'm going to do next is actually, what's the push blade I'm thinking about, the push blade, drill out this and see if this will then fit in there. This is almost perfect size, I think. Just let me sand the very end of this, or sand file. Very lightly, not really putting any force on that at all. So to drill out, I'm actually using these. I got these from Aldi. These are probably the best twist bits I've ever had. Inexpensive from Aldi, but they're the best set of twist bits I believe I've ever had. They cut very well, no problems. Tried cutting metal and other things, not all been used obviously yet, but you get two of some of the smaller size, two 1.5s, two 2s, two 2.5s. So if one breaks, you've always got another one, because the thinner ones are more likely to break. With this, I did actually have to almost melt a hole in here, because this was a little bit tight. It was touching up here, but when I melted a hole in, I can push it further down. That was the only problem with these twist bits. Anyway, 8mm, that is the size I want. Now be very careful with these twist bits, because these are razor sharp, the edges here. Okay, now I want something to hold that in. So to actually hold the twist bit, I'm going to use this is a Black & Decker drill. I think it's a 1/2 inch chuck. And to loosen to get your chuck off, I'm not actually going to use the drill, I'm just going to use the chuck. to get your chuck off, need a key. Now I don't know about keyless chucks, I don't know how you might do it with one of them, but just give this a sharp tap with a hammer, like this way around. You give it a whack, and that loosens it enough that you can start unscrewing the whole chuck. Okay. I would also probably recommend having some gloves, maybe. Then I'm going to put this 8mm twist bit, it's going the wrong way I think, yeah. Put this 8mm twist bit in there, just slipping a bit. Generally put it in all 3 holes, give the twist, be very careful. I did cut myself on these edges on this, like flute edges on this, one of these before. Razor sharp. If it's too tight, do not force it. So I'm just going backwards and forwards slightly there. Just gradually, very slowly. If it's sticking, stopping, and I'm going backwards and forwards a bit. I'm going to have a look and see what other sizes I've got. 6mm. This is an 8mm hole. Let me see if it's struggling a lot. I'm just going to try this 6mm. Put my gloves on. Put one of my gloves on because I don't want to get my fingers on these sharp edges. And drill it out with that a little bit first. Slips in these gloves. You might have another size, like 7.5 or something, and you can work your way up. I'm having to use, oops, I heard a crack there. So it has gone, you can see, the halfway stage. Now I'm going to twist it and start pulling it towards me, but still twisting in a clockwise direction. So that's tidying it up a bit. We can see some of the plastic getting in the flutes. Come from this side. Being careful of your fingers all the time. This side seems a little bit easier. Might have been done as I went through the other way. See, that's gone through now. It's take your time, don't force it. Yes, it has cracked. There's a split here. I'm going to actually squeeze that, some pressure as I turn this, being careful on my fingers, squeezing that together. And this is just to going backwards and forwards a bit, twisting it, pulling it towards me now. Give that a blow. And now I'm going to use a file on these edges a bit. But while I've got this twist bit out, I'm going to do this hole here, which is for the hub bolt, 8mm. That's the crack in there is just the supports on the other side. I still haven't removed them. But that's just to give that an initial sort of clean out while I've got that size twist bit in. Let me take that twist bit out, put back away, and then I'll come back. Okay, I'm going to try this pin in here. Now I did ask it to pin this a little bit smaller than 8mm. borderline. One idea I've had to stop a splitting is this is like a adjustable spanner. Just use that as a clamp to keep pressure on the first one that you're going in. Tighten that up. Sorry if that's going out. And then use the same idea of twist bit using hand. Keep that tight, and hopefully that will help stop a split. And don't let it go into the other one until you've cleaned out one. Just do one at a time, then clamp it on this other one. Got two spanners or wider spanner, adjustable bench. And just again, like giving this a bit more of a clean out, because it does seem a bit tight on that pin. I have put some super glue along the crack. You see it's shining a bit there, and I put some on here. I think there is another crack in there. Super glue inside. You want just a tiny bit. That is still tight. So I'm going to file that down more. Right, I've been filing it quite a bit more on this file. Again, trying to put a bit of a chamfer on it. I give it a light going over with some of this wet and dry paper. 2500 grit, that's very fine indeed. And I did ask for this to be just under 8mm when I printed out 7.4, and I asked for the hole here to be 8mm, and that's about 7.9. Okay, now it does go in there. We want it going in, I mean that's what I would call a snug fit. We want it to be able to turn. Here's one I did earlier, this blue one fits perfect really, but we might have to clean the hole out for the balls. See, that's find it hard. It's not, I don't think it's a hole, it's actually getting, let me push this back out. Yep, it's this notch here needs sanding or filing down on the edges. I don't think I have a file for that really, but I can use this sort of wet and dry or something a bit harder grit to start off with. Fold it over, go in the slot, and just like go like this a bit. Maybe open it up a bit as well. So that's sanding those two sides down. Also there's quite an angle here, anyway, that's for the bolt, so that the bolt will be able to leave it down into there. It seems to be this edge here that's sticking up a bit possibly, so I'm going to probably get some other sandpaper and do this again. Right, so pour 4.5mm drill in this chuck, and I'm just sort of cleaning out the edges here. Be very careful because these flutes are sharp. As I say, I did cut myself on one of these sort of edges of these flutes before. Cut one of my fingers like a razor blade. It's a bit rough here, so I'm going to sand that on the file. Sticking up a little bit. That also might take off some of this blue painter's tape. So again, sorry that this may be going off the camera. Zoom out a bit. Putting quite a bit of pressure on now. There's my long nose pliers here. I'm just gripping that. Oops. So I'm just gripping that and pulling and twisting a bit. That's coming off quite easily. The support mechanism where a skateboard bearing will go. We have a look at that. Not too bad, a bit of stringing just in the gap thing there. I'll try and twist that off if I can. A little bit rough around the edges, so I'll probably sand this down, and then I'll see about tidying this up if it needs it. Remembering there are two like bumps almost deliberately put on the edges of here to like grip the skateboard bearing. Well, before I do go back on the next stage, I'll just show you that that's partly why this slot is cut in a way at an angle, or printed at an angle, so that this bolt can lay down quite well into there. That one's checking that your bolt can do that, because that's to unhook that off as part of the quick release system. It wants to be able to slide in and out, and that's one reason we got this like round dowel that we printed out the pin, so that it will hook. And obviously being on a spring, whatever, it should be, well, relatively easy to do. Okay, bit of judicial sanding of edges here where it might be a little bit rough. Trying to get the light on this. I think when the sun shines outside, although I do have artificial light in here, seem to be having a bit of a problems at the moment, and this fits on here. But notice that it does have a nut inset on this side, so if you hold it with on the same side as this sort of lever, which is there just to help you hold it and open it and such like, there's a nut inset there. So basically we want to first of all make sure that the bolt will go through. Some of the excess off, trying this bolt in here. Yep, so that's going in there freely. Now this might need cleaning out a little bit, the nut thing in there. Well, to warm it up, I have this. It's a Modify 3D. It's supposed to be a finishing tool for parts like this. Bit like a USB soldering iron. This just plugs into a USB port. I've got this plugged into my laptop port. See, the light is on there, so it's getting warm. It's pretty hot, and obviously there's a bit of mass here, so it's going to take a bit of time to warm up. Steady this, line it up. The flat edge, well, there is a flat edge facing me on the nuts, so there's a flat edge at the bottom. My finger on the button, and I'm going to try and press with the thicker part of this onto this nut and bolt, putting some pressure on it. So the heat will be now transferring to this nut and bolt. Remember, because of the mass, with cold heat, it's like with all the heat for some seconds, and it seems to move around a little bit, so let me just so you know, no, it's okay, I think. Keep my finger on the silver button, it's just a push button on here. The soldering line will do this. The soldering line will probably be better because it's got more mass in the soldering line. Be careful not to bend this as much as possible, not putting too much pressure on here. So the board is probably taking quite a lot of heat away from the nut actually. I'm trying to actually now move it over to the top of the board more to the side of the nut. trying to use it on pressure because this will bend. It's actually bending this just at the moment. It's not melting plastic, but I'm not sure if that's plastic on this part. Make sure that check this in touching any other part of the plastic. It is starting to sink in now. Just moving it about a bit, so that has certainly sunk in a bit. Just trying to get almost level and then stopping. Let me stand this somewhere safe. It will switch off after a while, so I'm going to use this screwdriver. Now that is quite tight there, probably because some of the plastic hasn't also melted around the threads. That's one reason I want the bolt in here actually. You can see some of the black, probably plastic, is melted around that. Try screwing it reasonably fast. It has had a few seconds to cool down. Make sure that does line up with that other hole over there. Yes, that's going in. That's going in there fine. It's unscrewed all the way. See, it has melted some plastic. Probably see the plastic round here. Going to take it out, so then it's just... Sorry about that, the battery went on the camera. I've got plugged in now because I can't plug this in. So there's the inserted nut. Yep. This clips onto here. If it needs sanding down or filing down, obviously you're going to have to file that. See, now that nut is a bit prouder there, so it's making it a bit tighter. I think that might be okay. Screw this into that nut. Could have screwed this in a bit first actually. So I've got some ringing on this. I think the term it is ringing. See the lines round that hole there. I've got a nice size. I think this is the right one. That's going into that insert nut and come all the way through this inch part here, and probably should start giving up the other side. We have to move it out a bit to get into line. You screw the number 2 Phillips screwdriver here basically. Then on your sort of forming it. Yes, that's just starting to come out of that hole on the side now. Don't force it. If it starts sticking, it's probably not perfectly in line. If you force it, you're going to definitely break plastic. And just what we'll call a snug fit. Remember that it is going reasonably tight against that nut there. There's enough space to put a locking nut on the end if you probably want. Just enough. So that basically goes like this. And we can unhook that, unhook this, help change your filament, hook that back on, hook that back on. There'll be like a nail nut thing here. That'll be easier to grip. So that head of this bolt sort of goes into here. This is the bottom, so the filament goes like there's a cone shape here. Filament goes in there, comes out the top where we have one of these push type pressure valve things for the Bowden tube. This is Bowden fitting, belt drive, dragging on it. Okay, so we can get the basic idea here, and a spring on here to tighten and loosen it. So now I'm going to see about doing the next stages. As I say, that's one reason you want this sort of slot almost cut at an angle there, so that this bolt can twist round on this pivot pin. and hook on. Okay, let's have a look at the hub bolt. So here's a hub bolt. Now with these skateboard bearings, this is a normal type washer, but if you put a normal type washer on a skateboard bearing, just a second. So there's a skateboard bearing, standard skateboard bearing. If you put that on there, it's possible that the edges of this will rub against the edges of the skateboard bearing and help, well, cause it friction, because that part there actually turns. So what I would say you need is some of these. These are known as speed rings. These are for skateboards as well. These fit just within that inner ring there, sorry, that's falling on the floor, but it just fits within that E-ring, and that will stand it off enough to give it space to turn. So this is a hub bolt, as you see. I've drilled that out, that goes in there freely, but it's a little bit tight on here actually. Yeah, it's almost just pushing in with my hand. Doing that. So that fit on there for me is ideal. Okay. Now we want a washer on there, just a normal washer. These are curved a certain way, so I'm putting a flat side in over. Then a couple of these speed rings. 1, 2. Then one of our skateboard bearings. Pop that on. Yeah, it goes in that way. See, that skateboard bearing is a little bit proud there. Okay, using an old skate bearing, I heated it up and pressed it on here a bit. That was an old one. Don't use a one that you want to use, because you will drive the grease out, etc. Yeah, and that's, you can just see that the groove for the filament and the hub bolt is almost on there. When I'll tighten this up, I'll put another skateboard bearing on here. Skateboard bearing, I think. And we want a speed ring. Want a normal washer. See how that normal washer would touch against the edge of the bearing there if it didn't have that speed ring on. A lock and nut, or 2 nuts, will be better than this nut I have here, but that's just sort of for now. Well, let me actually start tightening that up a bit. It does tighten up quite a bit, I think. To a certain extent, this is going in over, like an insert here. So you might have to use like the points of an adjustable spanner, like I'm doing here, to reach. That's just starting to get a bit tight there. Tighten it up snug. It's too tight actually. Slacking it off a touch. So you can have a bit of adjustment on these speed rings, I think they're known as. Take one off, put one on. Likewise on this side, you could adjust it left and right a bit to a certain extent. It's a little bit out actually, so let me tighten that up. I might want to heat this up again and make this sink in it. That's another option. Just a little bit so that this groove of the hub bolt will move a little bit to the left, because it wants to line up with the holes where the filament go in. So I'm going to look at that next, and then I'll come back. Well, I found that I did take out, because I had two of those speed rings on this side. I took one out, and I think that does line up a little bit better with those holes. When I'm looking at it, it probably looks a bit straighter than in this camera actually. But yours might have to be adjusted with washers or speed rings, whichever, a little bit. I'm going to drill out this filament hole. It didn't really need drilling out, that filament hole, but yours might. And I've got some old filament. This has been used. You might see the groove marks of the hub bolt on there. This is 1.75 claimed to be, more near 1.7. I'm using this blue. You'll see better if I use this blue stuff. And basically this is the bottom, the one with the notch on where the quick release bolt going to go. That goes very freely indeed, almost straight up there. It comes out the top and it lines up with the groove for the hub bolt there. Now there are different sort of settings for hub bolts. Make sure, I'm going to be using 1.75, so make sure you have that. So I'm going to see about putting a escape bearing in this part. Right, I've hooked it together. I've got this spring on. This isn't the best spring for this, I don't think. Got a sort of nail nut thing here. So if I turn this, I've got an arrow on here, which helps me know that it's turning. Let's have a look, see if, oh, that is the way it's going in, coming out here. So let me hold it this way around. And as you see, the filament starts feeding out, and that will go to the Bowden tube. Take that back down, because basically there's no threads in here in this hole. What I'm going to do, this is like the Bowden push fitting for 2mm tube, so that's like 1.75. And basically, let me move this a little bit. I'm basically forcing that into here. Check that it is going in square as possible. Gradually tightening it. And just starting to feel quite a bit of resistance now, so I'm going to back off, just like I would with a tap. I'm going to actually take this all the way out. Doesn't really cut threads in there, not exactly. But I think that's enough to grip. So take it back in again. Tighten these jaws slightly. And now that's really quite solid there. I can feel it like hitting the bottom. It's quite tight, Let me take it all the way back out because I want to have a look. Just a second, let me get, let's see some teeth almost cut into there. Not really the best, but if it grips, it grips. Now I can actually screw that in most of the way, I think by hand. No, not quite, it's still tight, but then you want it to be tight. You don't want it coming loose, that's for sure. Let's tighten that back up. Again, it's just very tight on the bottom there, I can feel it. So this is at the bottom part, this is the bottom part. That's like a cone shape. I mean, you could have another hole in there for Bowden fitting if you wanted to put another tube on, go into an airtight sort of thing. Let me push that into there. And this is partly what this lever is for, so that we can, actually that's so tight, that spring. There's no giving that spring, see? No, there is. So that, really I need a better spring than that. But I can push that forward and unhook off there. I can push this filament in, make sure it goes in the other hole. This is coming loose because I really need a like locking nut on here. This is just a normal nut. I need a locking nut on there. By the way, you can get grooved bearings which have a groove in. You get deep groove, or I think presumably you can get shallow grooves. For 1.75 you probably want a shallow groove in the skate bearing, so it has an actual groove in the edge. That will probably help keep the filament in line. Put that on there. Just hook that onto here. Now, which way am I turning? This way, clockwise, and as you can see the filament is starting to come out. Obviously to be the Bowden tube pushed in here. And this is where the stepper goes. I would recommend an aluminium 20 tooth sort of pinion thing for belt drive here. And basically then you have your stepper coming through with a 20 tooth pinion on. You can adjust it a bit by sliding it, and then that will turn, this wheel turn in the hob bolt there, which grips the filament. I'll say I want a better spring than this one. I'm going to have a look for better spring, but you get the basic idea there. So put that, I don't want to lose that belt. Get them on eBay. I will put a link down below. What's the information? That seems to work okay. It's gripping that filament fine. I mean, if I pull on that filament, see it's even turning the wheel. Obviously you've got some adjustment on the spring, so to speak. Now for me, I would rather have this gap a bit closed. That would mean possibly redesigning this a bit so that this sort of pin dowel thing here I have will go a bit deeper. So although it does work, this like pin is out of line a bit with, there's like a dent in this side and a dent in this side, and they're out of line with each other. I'm not sure how well, so don't know. So there's a dent in this side for the pin, but there's also a dent in the other side for the pin, and one's a little bit higher than the other. So I think I will modify this side again, because I want to make this top certainly thicker, because as you've seen that did crack along the edge when I was drilling this hole a bit neater, like tidying it up. It works, as I say, the spring's quite loose there, but even so I can pull on I'm pulling on the filament here. Just a second, if you don't believe you. Putting on the filament and you see that's turning that wheel. And that's quite loose, that's without any real pressure on it. Didn't need it. Put this dragon more teeth on. So I think it's good to do with another iteration, another like adjustment. I also want to see, because this is a bit like sticks a bit because it's going in at an angle, particularly on that washer. I think the teeth are catching on this washer when I'm doing that at that angle. So you're sticking there. I think that bolt head could go a little bit further in as well, a little bit further down in that side. And possibly this, one reason I had these dents in this wheel, it's almost so that your fingers can grip on the wheel and turn it if need be. That's the main reason for them. I don't think it needs them, but I know those are not totally symmetrical. So there's some modifications I still possibly want to do to this. I mean, there's no doubt that would probably feed and feed quite well, I imagine. As I say, when I pull on this filament, as you see, it's actually turning the wheel. That's not totally tightened up. And as you can see, that's going. Yeah. That's that stage. I mean, it's reasonably okay. I'm going to have to think about like improving this, I think. Don't like that gap, not that much gap anyway. This needs probably making a bit thicker on the top. Maybe some way of stopping this bolt from like sticking on this washer somehow. Maybe a bit of an angle on there. I don't know. I'll have to, it's back to the drawing board I think to a certain extent. See how much that's sort of come loose there. I don't know if I loosen that off actually. As I say, locking nut on that side. Okay, so that's this iteration. 3 holes for mounting to your, well, a printer. So this part here, obviously this will be on the printer, be easier to do, but I can pull on, say I can pull on that, gives me a good thing to get hold of if I need to, even when it's fastened just on that spring there. Have to generally push in a little bit to release it. It's still not all that quick feed. I don't think it's not like 100% quick, super quick feed, but it just sort of releases the pressure off the hub bolt a bit, and that might help you thread it. So I'll just show you it threading again. Let's do it this way up. This is the way it would be up. Poke it up here. Make sure it goes in that other hole at the top, and then out it comes. Then obviously close it. See that? The teeth on this bolt are definitely clicking on that washer there. So something's probably going to have to be done about that. turn it backwards. You can see the filament's going back, turn it forwards, the filament's coming that way.